So many South Africans struggle to make ends meet even when there wasn't a lockdown. South Africa entered a technical recession last year already, and the latest stats SA results show GDP shrank by 2% in the first quarter of this year. So with everything going up and your salary staying the same or worse, how do you save? I'm joined via Skype by Ayanda Majola. She's the co-founder and CEO of SV Capital. Thank you very much for joining us, Sis Ayanda. So it's a very, very difficult time for a lot of us. So what do you say to somebody that says, I don't even have enough to save, my back is up against the wall? What do I do?
Hi, Dudu. Very good to join you today. So I think everyone is feeling the pinch right now. We are going through unprecedented times. We're going through very difficult times. As you just job loss is on the rise, COVID-19 outbreaks on the rise. So I think it's not just a South African thing, but it's a global thing, where everyone is feeling a pinch on their pockets. But I think even though we are sort of pushed against a wall, you need to remember that the pandemic will pass. And when it does pass, you need to ensure that you have a financial plan for that future. And having that financial plan for the future doesn't really require you to put away much. You can set aside from as little as 500 Rand towards your savings and investing just to ensure that you're working towards that financial future.
And what sort of options are available for you? You speak about a certain amount of money a month. What do you do with it? What options do you have? Do you put it in a 32-day savings account, or do you go and see a financial advisor and say, hey, this is all I have?
So there are multiple options available across the board. And I guess from an options perspective, it would depend on what your appetite is. Specifically from an SV Capital perspective, we offer investing in cattle from as little as 500 Rand. So how it would work is from the 500 Rand you'd invest, you'd be co-investing with other investors to buy into a herd of cattle. So you'd own a percentage of a herd as opposed to owning just one cattle belonging to you. And from a risk perspective, that's very important because, I mean, if there's any losses, then it's shared amongst the entire herd and all the investors that are invested in that herd, as opposed to have to carrying that by yourself. So I think you need to take it upon yourself to do as much research as possible. There are options available in order for you to start investing, because we know that traditional investment companies tend to have very high minimums, which is the one thing that tends to deter or push people away from investing. So you can look at other companies that do have these options in order for you to start with as little as 500 Rand.
For somebody that says, I've saved up some money from the previous few months, even before we had COVID, but unfortunately I'm not going to work like I used to go to work, so they've cut my time. Should I dip into my funds that I have already without a plan?
I don't think you should dip into your funds without a plan. I'm a firm believer that whenever spending money or when you're trying to dip into that savings pool you've accumulated over time, you should always have a plan for it. The one golden rule I go by is that firstly, you need to pay yourself first. So if you're dipping into that pool with the concept or notion of trying to pay yourself first, then that is absolutely great, because paying yourself means that you are taking those funds, allocating them to yourself, and then you use them to start saving or investing. The other one is that you need to invest regularly. So I like to think of it as having a habit of investing, so accumulating it over time, because when you do it continuously, then you are building a habit, you're growing regularly, and also you're working towards growing your investment base and also working towards your financial goals. So when you dip into it, just ensure that you do have a solid plan around it, and ensure that that solid plan does generate an income or return for you in the long term.
Are there things that you can shave off? I mean, it'll depend on each individual and what your needs are, but it is also quite a difficult time, and some people will be like, can I just have some of my comforts?
Well, you know, I think the pandemic has shown us what we can live with and what we can't live with. So in this time, you do have to take into consideration that there are some things you'll have to shave off just to allow you to get through this difficult time. You know, it's weighing out the options. It's weighing out what's important, what's not. And in looking at that, it will require you to take some time and actually shave off things that aren't a necessity. The pandemic has shown us that in order for us to get through this time, in order for us to get back to normality, it will require a bit of sacrifices. I think you also mentioned it a bit earlier, with income coming down a lot. Some people are losing income, some people are not even getting their full salary. You're sort of forced into a position where you have to shave down and consider how you can maximize what you have on hand.
Can we just give a word to somebody, especially in terms of pressure? You know, there's pressure to save, there's pressure to do this, there's pressure to do that. It is a very difficult time, and in some instances, there's nothing that you can do. So should also we put pressure off of ourselves until things work themselves out?
Definitely, definitely. I think we tend to take on pressure of other people's situations, and we need to be very realistic about what our situation is. You know, I think if you're in a position where you can afford to pay yourself and give and set aside at least 500 Rand, then do it, because you can find investment options in order for you to put that 500 Rand into. But if you're finding that you don't even have room to wiggle to set aside that 500 Rand, you shouldn't feel pressurized. I think it's focusing on trying to get through what we're currently going through, and then when things normalize, you can go back to your normal investment plan that you would have initially had.
Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. This is Ayanda Majola, co-founder and CEO of SV Capital.